You ever work with someone so long they feel like family? I'm talking deeper than friends, more than coworkers. Like blood you chose, not the kind you're born with. That was Luis for me. I'm Jose Rivera, 38, born and baked in Mesa, Arizona. I run a landscaping business, or I did until this whole mess started. My dad taught me the trade before I hit puberty. I was hauling mulch before I ever kissed a girl. By the time I was out of high school, I had calluses, a business license, and a client list longer than some people's resumes. Luis Morales and I met in 7th grade detention. He called our math teacher a bald tyrant under his breath. I laughed, got caught too, and just like that we were bonded over sarcasm and bad timing. We were tight all through high school, then into our 20s. We drank cheap beer on the bed of my dad's old truck, made up landscaping company names that sounded more like rock bands, Verdant Rage, and Motown Hustle. Eventually, we settled on Rivera and Morales Landscaping. I should have seen the narcissism in that ampersand. For 10 years, we built something good. We didn't get rich, but we did okay. Early mornings, hot summers, backaches, and busted equipment. He was good with people, real smooth. The type who could sell a deluxe turf package to a guy who just wanted his weeds cut. Me? I ran the back end. Scheduling, payroll, hiring. Real work. Around year 9, I noticed Luis showing up late more often. He'd stroll in holding a Starbucks with his sunglasses still on, like some yard work celebrity. Didn't think much of it. We'd always been opposites. I assumed maybe he was just burning out. But then we lost the Harris job. Dr. Harris was one of our bread and butter clients. Weekly trim, bi-monthly irrigation checks, seasonal planting. He paid on time and gave out bonuses at Christmas like he was Santa with a CPA. So when he emailed me saying he was going in a different direction, I was thrown. No complaint, no warning. Just gone. I asked Luis about it. He shrugged. Said maybe the guy was just cutting costs. Next week, we lost the Rileys. Then the Perkinsons. All in the same neighborhood like some leafy little Bermuda Triangle. I got suspicious. One Saturday morning, I drove by Harris's house. Just swung through the neighborhood on my day off. That's when I saw it. A new landscaping trailer parked out front. Same colors. Same font. But the logo was different now, Morales Property Services. Rivera? Gone. Not faded, scratched out. I parked a block away and just stared. Luis was on the lawn laughing with Harris like nothing had changed. Wearing our uniform shirt. Using our damn leaf blower. I sat there in my truck gripping the steering wheel like it owed me rent. I didn't call him. Didn't confront him. Didn't drive up and scream like I wanted to. That's not how I was raised. See, Luis thinks betrayal is a clean break. But what he doesn't know, what a lot of people don't know, is that some roots grow deep. And when you rip them out without warning, you better be damn sure they're dead. Because if they're not, they grow back. Stronger. Smarter. And they don't forget. People talk about betrayal like it's this big explosion, one moment of impact and boom, everything's ruined. But in real life, it's quieter. Slower. Like a hairline crack in your windshield that spreads when the weather turns. That was Luis and me. We didn't blow up. We eroded. After I saw him at Dr. Harris's place, I didn't sleep for 2 nights. Just lay there in the dark, playing out conversations in my head. You ever do that thing where you imagine confronting someone and absolutely owning them? I had lines for days. You forgot who carried your ass through that dry summer in 2016. You wouldn't know a work ethic if it mowed you down. But I didn't say any of it. Instead, I pulled out the partnership agreement I'd written on a legal pad 9 years earlier, back when we still split everything 50-50 and settled disputes over carne asada and Modelo. There was no LLC. Just a handshake, a bank account with both our names, and an understanding. I ran the business, he brought in the charm. Turns out charms got a shelf life. A few days later, I called one of our old crew leads, Frankie. Good guy. Quiet, reliable, only talks when it matters. I asked him why he left. He paused and said Luis offered more per hour and cash. Said you weren't gonna make it through the year anyway. That hit me harder than I'd like to admit. I started digging, not just emotionally, but legally. Checked the Arizona Corporation Commission's public records. Boom, Morales Property Services, LLC. Registered 6 weeks prior. His signature, his address. Filed as a single-member business. No mention of me. I even checked the business license renewal. He'd let our old one lapse, then reapplied under his name only. Slick. Dirty. Legal. I didn't confront him right away. I needed to know how deep this rot went. So I visited a few of our old clients, acting like I was checking on old projects. Every time I showed up, I'd find new mulch, new edges, new plants, my designs, just redone with cheaper materials. Luis wasn't just stealing clients, he was recycling my work. But here's the real kicker. One evening I drove by the equipment yard we used to lease together. It was behind an old auto body shop and we split the rent with the owner, an old Marine named Hank. I hadn't been back since Luis took it over. But that night, curiosity got the better of me. I pulled up behind a row of oleanders and watched from a distance. There was Luis loading our old zero-turn mower onto his shiny new trailer. That mower had my initials scratched into the deck plate. He still hadn't even taken the time to grind them off. He looked good, confident, even. He was laughing with two of the guys I used to pay under the table while we were trying to get legit. They looked at ease, like they'd never had a real job in their lives. Luis handed them each a Gatorade, slapped the side of the trailer like it was a race car, and said something that made them laugh. I sat in my truck with the windows down, the smell of gas and cut grass in the air, and I felt something in my chest go tight. It wasn't just anger, it was grief. Grief for the years I'd spent building something that wasn't real. For trusting a guy who'd rather poach what I made than earn something of his own. But that tight feeling? It didn't stay grief for long. It hardened into something else. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to swing. I was going to strategize. Luis thought he'd taken my clients, my team, and my future. But he made one mistake. He thought I'd just let him. There's a moment, just one, that separates a guy who takes it from a guy who remembers. For me, it was when I had to sit my cousin Diego down and tell him I couldn't keep him on payroll. That stung worse than anything Luis did. Diego had been with me since the beginning. When it was just me, him, and a trailer with two busted wheels and a mower held together by duct tape and family prayers. The guy once worked 12 days straight in 118-degree heat just to keep us from losing a school contract. I watched him grow into a foreman. Trained him myself. So when I said the words, "I can't afford you right now, man," he didn't say anything. Just nodded. Took off his cap, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and shook my hand like a man getting evicted from a home he built with his own tools. He didn't blame me, which almost made it worse. I spent that night in my garage, sitting on an upside-down paint bucket, staring at our old whiteboard of routes. So many crossed-out names. So many clients who went with the cheaper guy. And Luis? He was thriving. Word got around quick. Morales Property Services was underbidding everyone in town, offering full lawn packages at 30% under market. You can only do that if you cut corners, underpay your guys, skip insurance, blow off pesticide certification. But people don't ask questions when they see green lawns and low bills. Luis started posting Instagram stories of himself on the grind riding mowers with sunglasses on, flexing like he invented landscaping. He even tagged my old clients with captions like, "Keeping this place looking." Okay, I won't use emojis, but he sure did. I should have been mad. Should have felt rage, betrayal, all that good soap opera stuff. But what I actually felt? Embarrassed. Embarrassed that I let it happen. That I didn't see it sooner. That I believed we were building something together while he was just waiting to carve his name into the scraps. And somewhere in all that shame, a thought hit me. Not loud, not angry. Quiet. Like a tap on the shoulder. Use what you know. Because here's the thing, Luis could charm a client. But he never read the fine print. Never cared about permits, licenses, insurance minimums. That was my job. I was the one on the phone with the city planning department, learning which forms had to be wet-signed and which ones triggered an audit. I was the guy who once sat through a 6-hour online course on backflow prevention just so we could get a church account. Luis? He was too busy flirting with the secretary. And now he was flying solo. So I started poking around. Not publicly. Quietly. Called up an old friend on the board of the Canyon Ridge Country Club. Place was high-end, the kind of spot where retirees pay 6 figures just to look at a man-made lake. I'd done some small projects for them years ago. Nothing major, just cleanups and consultation. But I knew their board ran like a courtroom. Everything required insurance, permits, background checks. They'd sue their own landscaper if the petunias were out of season. They were planning a full outdoor renovation. A 6-figure job. And suddenly I had an idea. It came fully formed, like it had been sitting in the back of my head just waiting for the right moment. I wasn't going to take Luis to court. I wasn't going to fight him in the streets. I wasn't going to punch him or key his truck or spread rumors. I was going to give him a gift. A very public opportunity. One he wouldn't be able to resist. One he'd step right into with both feet. You ever watch a man dig his own grave with a smile? It's a hell of a thing. I didn't talk to Luis right away. That would have ruined it. See, the key to a trap isn't the bait, it's the illusion of choice. You gotta make it feel like his idea. Make him think he's winning. Because the more sure he is of himself, the less he watches his step. So I started setting the table. First, I reached out to Rachel. She's an old client and, more importantly, a board member at Canyon Ridge Country Club. You know the type, pearl earrings, SUV with the built-in espresso machine, speaks fluent HOA. We did her backyard 3 years ago and I saved her favorite lemon tree during a whitefly outbreak. Instant loyalty? I called her under the pretense of offering some ideas for the club's renovation project. Said I wasn't bidding myself, just consulting. Told her I knew a guy who could give them a really competitive rate. Not fancy, not flashy, but fast, cheap, and eager. Are you vouching for him? She asked. I hesitated just enough. Let's say. I know what he's about. Rachel knew me well enough to read between the lines. She agreed to float his name to the board on the condition that they still did a full vetting. Insurance verification, labor certification, background checks. Standard protocol, nothing sneaky. Meanwhile, I started greasing the other side. I sent Luis a message, casual, friendly, like the past 6 months hadn't happened. Got too much on my plate. You open to subbing on a big job? Took him 10 minutes to reply. Hell yeah. What kind of job? I told him it was commercial. Real upscale. Told him they needed someone who could hit a low number and move fast, and I figured he'd be perfect. He lapped it up. Who's the client? Country Club. Which one? I waited 10 minutes. Then replied. Canyon Ridge. I knew what that name would do to him. Canyon Ridge isn't just a client, it's a trophy. A status booster. You land that account, you get leverage in every neighborhood within 20 miles. For a guy like Luis, it would be like winning prom king and mayor at the same time. He responded with, I'm in. Of course he was. The next few days were a masterclass in watching a man overplay his hand. Luis called me twice asking for tips on commercial pricing. Said he wanted to do it right, but I could hear it in his voice, he was already mentally spending the money. He showed up to the initial walkthrough wearing a button-down shirt with actual buttons and khakis, trying to look like a business owner instead of a guy who once trimmed hedges in basketball shorts. He smiled, shook hands, made jokes about being the young gun on the scene. He even said, don't worry, I've got a great crew. Certified. Insured. All above board. Right to Rachel's face. I stood back. Said nothing. Just watched him sell himself like a used truck with a fresh coat of wax. Thing is, I knew his game. I knew the guys he used were still working under the table. I knew he doctored his insurance documents, same ones we both learned how to fake back in the early days when we were broke and bidding low-ball jobs for HOA flower beds. I also knew Canyon Ridge required documentation for every crew member on site and that they ran random e-verify checks. I knew their contracts included indemnity clauses that kicked in the moment false documents were discovered. And most importantly, I knew Luis had no idea what indemnity even meant. He submitted his bid 3 days later. Came in at $68,000 under the next lowest bidder. The board loved it. Rachel pretended to be skeptical just enough to make it look fair, but ultimately approved it. And just like that, Luis got his dream job. And I started the stopwatch. Luis kicked off the Canyon Ridge job like a man who thought he'd just won the lottery. I drove by on the first day under the guise of checking in like an old friend who wanted to see how the prodigal son was doing. He spotted me from across the lot, gave me that grin he used to flash at waitresses when he still thought he was slick. Appreciate the hookup, bro, he said, wiping sweat off his neck with a towel. This place? Man, this is gonna blow up my profile. He wasn't wrong. Canyon Ridge had eyes. If you did good work there, word spread fast. If you screwed it up, it spread faster. I asked him if he'd submitted all his paperwork. He waved me off like I was asking if he'd remembered to brush his teeth. All good, he said. Sent them a PDF last night. You know how it is. Oh, I knew. I knew exactly how it was. He'd reused a doctored certificate of liability insurance. Same template we used back in the day to sneak onto bigger bids. Thing was, back then, we used it to buy time while we got real coverage. Luis? He was using it like it was gospel. And I knew for a fact the certifying agent listed on the document hadn't worked for that firm in 5 years. I checked. His crew was another story entirely. For guys I recognized from our old crew, plus a couple new ones who looked like they couldn't legally rent a car, let alone operate a hedge trimmer. One of them was clearly underage. One was wearing sandals. Sandals. On a landscaping job. But Louis strutted around that site like he was running for office. Grinning, directing traffic, promising the board things he had no way of delivering. "This'll be done in 4 weeks. Tops," he told Rachel one afternoon. Even though the irrigation system alone would take 3. She gave him a tight smile and said, "We look forward to seeing the full labor roster by Friday." He nodded, confident as hell. But I saw the flicker in his eyes. He didn't have that list. He didn't want to have that list. Because that list meant social security numbers, tax forms, compliance, real business stuff. Not Gatorade and gut-feeling operations. That Friday came. And so did the state inspector. Unannounced. See, one of the club's other board members had quietly flagged the insurance certificate with the Arizona Registrar of Contractors. Just a gentle nudge. Enough to trigger a cross-check. The inspector walked onto the property like a man on a mission. Clipboard, camera, sunglasses that didn't come off. He spoke to Luis for all of 90 seconds before asking to see licenses, crew certifications, and time cards. Luis laughed at first. Thought it was some bureaucratic box check. Then the inspector said the words, "You're being investigated under ARS Section 32 to 1122 for fraudulent representation of contractor status." That got Luis's attention. He stopped smiling. His voice dropped. Started with, "Can't we just," and ended with, "I didn't know." His crew started gathering behind the truck, whispering. One of the new guys bolted. Just took off down the street like he was late for church. The inspector didn't say much. Just made notes, took photos of the site, including the license plate on Luis's trailer, and handed him a formal notice of violation. I watched from the corner of the lot. Luis caught my eye for half a second. I gave him a polite nod. Nothing smug. No gloating. Just a nod. The kind you give someone when the storm's rolling in and they just realize their umbrella's made of lies. I didn't say a word. Didn't need to. He'd stepped right into it like I knew he would. The thing about a structure built on shortcuts, it doesn't crumble slowly. It implodes. Fast. Loud. With pieces flying in all directions. That was Luis's operation after the state inspector paid his little visit. The very next day, Canyon Ridge suspended the contract, pending investigation. That's country club code for "you're done here, and we're covering our asses in case you sue." Rachel called me the night it happened. I was elbow deep in fertilizer at a charter school job. She sounded equal parts amused and exhausted. "They had the nerve to ask us for an extension," she said. Luis claimed it was all just a paperwork mix-up. Said he'd get it squared away. We gave him 48 hours. Privately, the board already voted to terminate the contract. That call ended with her laughing softly and saying, "You didn't warn us, Jose, but you warned us." Luis must have thought he could charm his way out of it. He tried calling every board member individually. Left voicemails, showed up at the clubhouse to talk. Even offered a deep discount to finish the job. Problem was, the insurance fraud was just the tip of the iceberg. 2 of his workers were undocumented, and the club, being a private institution with federal tax considerations, was required to run fully verified checks on anyone on site. One of the guys was 17 with no valid ID. Another had a prior deportation order. The whole thing escalated past the state board and straight to Homeland Security. And just like that, Luis wasn't just a shady landscaper anymore. He was officially under federal scrutiny. I heard all this through the grapevine, mostly from Frankie, one of the workers who jumped ship once the job was pulled. He called me, voice tight, not asking for a job, yet just explaining, like a man trying to climb out of a collapsing house. "Look, Jose," he said. "We didn't know he was gonna pull that stuff. He said it was all covered. Said his guy took care of the licenses." "He doesn't have a guy, Frankie." "Yeah. We figured that out." By then, Luis had lawyered up or tried to. Problem was, lawyers cost money, and Luis had already poured every dime into gear leases and fake payroll to look legit for the club. His credit was tapped, his trailer was financed at 19%, and I'm pretty sure he still owed half the crew gas money. I drove past the worksite a few days after the shutdown. The grass was browning. Pallets of sod sat unrolled. The sprinkler system had been partially dug up, then abandoned mid-install. A windblown sign still read Morales Property Services, Elevate Your Yard, in crooked vinyl lettering. And there, in the middle of it all, was Luis's truck. Doors open, trash on the seat, a clipboard on the dash like he'd just stepped out for lunch and never came back. I sat in my truck across the street, engine running. I didn't feel joy. Not really. I felt finality. The kind that comes when a long, slow betrayal finally lands in court with the truth, and the truth has steel-toed boots. Luis's little empire had been smoke and mirrors. And now? The smoke had cleared. The mirrors were shattered. And all he had left was a reputation that burned faster than dry lawn in July. And I hadn't even played my last card yet. You ever see a man start shrinking while he's still standing? That was Luis. After the job shut down, it was like he became less of a person and more of a rumor. His truck stopped showing up around Mesa. No new jobs. No fresh posts on social media. His Instagram, where he used to flex every project like it was a magazine cover, went dark. Last post? A blurry shot of Canyon Ridge with the caption, "Big moves this year. Stay tuned." Oh, we were staying tuned all right. Meanwhile, the legal fallout was just warming up. Word got out fast. The landscaping scene in Arizona is like a barbershop. Every man with a truck and a blower knows every other guy's business. By week 2, Luis's name was poison. Clients were ghosting him. Old crewmates were texting me behind his back. "You hiring? He hasn't paid us since the Ridge thing. He says you sabotaged him." Which, to be fair, wasn't entirely untrue. But I hadn't even touched the matchbox yet. See, when Canyon Ridge pulled the contract, it didn't just kill the job, it triggered a default clause in their vendor agreement. Basically, if any misrepresentation occurred, insurance, licensing, employment eligibility, the club could pursue restitution. Civil court, baby. Lawyers, court fees, damages. All of it. And thanks to my conversation with Rachel and a strategically provided copy of his falsified insurance cert from my archives, the club's legal team had receipts. They were already drafting letters of demand when I made my next move. I emailed Luis. Simple, direct, no venom. Subject, business cleanup. Luis, I know things went south. I also know Canyon Ridge is going after damages. I've heard from a few of our old clients, they're pissed, and you know how fast reputations fall around here. I can help. You want a chance to make this right, call me. Jose. He called the next day. Voice thin. Humbled in a way I'd never heard before. I didn't think it'd go this far, he said. That's what happens when you run with scissors and call it business, I replied. There was a pause. What do you want? He asked flat. And there it was, the fear. Not of jail. Not of debt. But of irrelevance. Of having to move to another city, start over under a fake name, take jobs from the same crews he used to look down on. So I made my offer. I want the company. Morales Property Services. The name, the gear, the remaining accounts, what's left of them. You want my business? I want my name back. You owe it. He hesitated. I let the silence work on him. Let it stretch out like a long Arizona dusk. And in return, he asked, I'll talk to the club's lawyers. Tell them you cooperated. Might shave a few zeros off your problem. Another long pause. Finally, he exhaled. You're cold, man. No, I said. I'm just not stupid anymore. 2 days later, I got an email with a signed transfer of ownership. His trailer, what gear he hadn't pawned, and the business license, what was left of it, all handed over to me. The same guy he ghosted. Undercut. Tried to bury. He walked away with nothing but debt and excuses. I didn't want his broken business. Not really. I shut it down within a week. But taking it? That was the point. Now the only thing left with Luis Morales' name on it was a string of fines, an empty bank account, and a silent phone. And me? I was just getting started again. It's strange how revenge doesn't always taste the way you expect. You think it'll be fire, heat, a kind of righteous burn in your chest. But for me, it came more like a calm. A slow, quiet satisfaction like the first breeze after a storm when everything's wrecked but the air smells clean. After Luis signed over what was left of Morales Property Services, I didn't gloat. Didn't throw a party? Hell, I didn't even tell Diego right away. It didn't feel like something to celebrate. More like a broken bone finally healing the right way. I took inventory of what I'd inherited. His trailer was parked behind a rundown self-storage spot on the east side of Mesa, tires half flat, jack propped up with a cinder block. Inside? A mower with no blades, 2 busted trimmers, and an empty Gatorade bottle that smelled like motor oil. His business was paper-thin. A few lingering clients, lowballers who'd already stopped paying him, and a Square account flagged for suspicious transactions. His reputation was so scorched by then I couldn't even salvage the contact list without looking desperate. So I shut it down. All of it. Filed a formal dissolution with the state, deactivated the website, even deleted his Instagram page since it had come bundled in the asset transfer. Poof. Gone. He built his house on sand. I just swept it away. What I kept was the lesson. I went back to the roots, literally. Rebranded as Rivera Grounds and Design. Nothing flashy, just solid. Hired 2 new guys, legal, skilled, hungry to work. Took on smaller jobs with high-end potential, local schools, churches, some real estate staging work. People started noticing. I didn't advertise. I didn't need to. Word of mouth filled the schedule. The same clients Luis had courted with false promises were now calling me asking if I had room. I took some. Turned down others. Not out of pettiness, because I'd learned. Quality over quantity. Roots over flesh. A few weeks later, I ran into Frankie at Home Depot. He was loading sod into the back of a rental truck. We talked. He asked for work. I gave him a trial day, then hired him. Not because I owed him, but because the guy could hustle and he'd been a pawn in Luis's game just like I was. He asked how Luis was doing. Still around, he said, almost hopeful, almost like you'd ask about a cousin who went to jail but might have turned it around. I shrugged. I think he's in Tucson. Or maybe Flagstaff. Hard to say. Truth was, I didn't know. I hadn't heard from him since he turned over the papers. I didn't block his number. Didn't need to. His silence said more than any voicemail could. One evening I got a call from Canyon Ridge. Their board was forming a long-term vendor list. They asked if I'd consider putting in a bid for real this time. I told them I'd think about it. Then I hung up, stepped outside, and stood on my porch listening to the sprinklers kick on in my own yard. Perfect timing. Edges clean. Bermuda grass thick. Sometimes justice isn't a fist or a flame. Sometimes it's just being the last man standing. Still working. Still honest. Still here. 3 months passed and Luis became less a person and more a cautionary tale. I'd hear bits, mostly secondhand. A friend of a friend saw him working maintenance at a resort in Tucson. Someone else said he was hauling gravel on day labor contracts up near Payson. Could have been rumor. Could have been truth. Didn't matter. Either way, he was out of the game. The Canyon Ridge offer sat in my inbox for a week. It was a big opportunity, no doubt. Year-round maintenance contract. Seasonal installs. Long-term capital projects. The kind of gig that could stabilize a crew and bankroll an expansion. But it came with something else too, attention. After what happened with Luis, the club was cautious. Vetting was deeper. Insurance requirements tighter. Site visits scheduled months in advance. I didn't blame them. But I also knew what came with it. Red tape, politics, client-side micromanagement. And me? I was rebuilding slow, simple, clean. So I did what I never would have done 5 years ago. I turned it down. Not rudely. I wrote them a polite, professional note thanking them for the offer and recommending a colleague who ran a mid-sized crew with the capacity for that scale. Rachel called me the next day. Was it too much, she asked. Not too much, I said. Just not for me. Not right now. There was a pause. Well, she said, if you change your mind, the gate isn't locked. I thanked her. Meant it. Because when you've been burned, the first instinct is to chase every wind like it's water in a desert. But I wasn't dying of thirst anymore. I had steady work. A good team. Clients who paid on time. And I had something else, my name. Rivera Grounds and Design started showing up on neighborhood Facebook groups tagged under posts like, Looking for a landscaper who actually shows up. Need someone reliable for our backyard remodel, any Rex? Rivera's been great. Not cheap, but worth it. And that's when I realized what Luis had really tried to steal. Not just clients. Not just equipment. He tried to take my reputation. The thing you spend years building with sweat and quiet consistency, not slogans and Instagram filters. But the thing about your name, if you protect it, if you earn it, it survives. Even when people try to write you out. One afternoon, Diego came by. He hadn't seen the new setup yet. 2 trucks, clean trailers, uniforms, branded gear. No gimmicks, just pride. He walked the yard, nodded a few times, and finally said, "You came back from it." I just smiled. Didn't really go anywhere. He laughed, shook his head. "Luis ever call you again?" "No." "You'd pick up if he did?" I looked at him. "No." "You can forgive. Or you can remember. I don't carry hate. But I do carry truth. And sometimes the best revenge is having nothing left to prove." There's a sound I hear sometimes early in the morning before the crews arrive, when it's just me and the dew and the hum of a fresh sharpened blade. It's not loud. Not even distinct. More like a feeling than a noise. Peace. Took me damn near 15 years, one betrayal, and a whole lot of silent nights to learn that the goal was never to win. Not in the way I used to think. I spent too long measuring success by accounts, margins, and how much greener my clients' lawns looked compared to the guy across the street. But now it's measured in something quieter. My youngest employee, Matt, he's 22, barely knows how to hold a rake without choking it, came into work last week, set down his gear, and said, "Hey man, my dad says you used to run with that Morales guy. Says you made him disappear." I didn't say anything for a second. Then I said, "Your dad exaggerates. He made himself disappear." Matt nodded. "Still kinda badass though." That made me laugh. I gave him the new work order and told him to double-check the backflow valves on the school job. He ran off, still half kid, half man, eager to earn a compliment. I like that about him. No ego yet. Just hustle. I think that's what got Luis in the end, ego. He built his business like a bonfire. Big, flashy, hot. Burned bright enough to blind people until it collapsed under its own ashes. Me? I was always the guy with the slow fire. Kept it fed. Kept it honest. And now I'm still standing while he's just smoke. I heard through a friend, Luis picked up a job up north doing odd work for a commercial maintenance outfit. Word is, he's off the books answering to a guy who used to work under us. There's a symmetry to that I won't pretend I didn't smile at. But I don't think about him much anymore. Not out of forgiveness, out of disinterest. That's the real revenge. When the man who tried to erase you becomes just a footnote in your story, not the headline. These days, I've got contracts with 3 schools, 1 church, and a community garden I volunteer at once a month. My cousin Diego's back on the team full-time. Frankie too. We don't talk about the old days. We talk about what's next. What's growing. Sometimes I walk the rows at the garden in silence, hand-brushing rosemary and basil, smelling the future. Not everything we plant is meant to be harvested immediately. Some things need time. Some things you plant just to know you could. And me? I'm just a guy with dirt under his nails and his name still intact. Not famous. Not rich. But respected. And for the first time in a long time, that's more than enough. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Write in the comments whether the author of the thread did the right thing.